Okay, in this video, we're going to start working on different enemies that we can have in our game. We're going to start out by preparing our scene so it's a little bit easier to get our enemy going. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that our window layout looks like we have it. So if your Unity scene environment doesn't look like this, we can go up to Window, Layouts, and then go to Default, like so. There we go. It even resets our camera for us. And then we can expand our hierarchy over here, and these are all of our objects in our scene that we're used to. Why don't we go ahead and disable our player mech so we can just focus directly on our enemy. So I'm going to do this by selecting our player mech, and then over here in the inspector, a little check mark right there beside my name, I'm going to just uncheck it for right now. And that'll kind of get rid of the mech, and notice how it's grayed out over here in our hierarchy. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to expand place enemies here. And in our little scene here, we already have our enemy template right here. Why don't we go ahead and name this something right now? I'm going to call this enemy A. I can give him a better name later if I want. And then I'm going to try to move him to the center of my work environment while still having enemy A selected. We're going to go over here in my inspector, and we're going to expand transform. There's a little gear cog right here. If you hit that and hit reset, then it resets all of our position values, rotation, and scale. And now we have our enemy mech right in the middle of the road right here. All right, that's great. So I think we're about ready to start decorating our enemy. And it's going to basically be the same as decorating our player mech. There's not going to be too much different here. So we're going to start out by going to our hierarchy over here and see my enemy A. This is my enemy I'm working on. I'm going to expand that by clicking on the little arrow. And we have a familiar little object right here called place parts on here. That's where we're going to start dragging and dropping our enemy parts. I'm going to navigate in my project window now down here to enemy mechs. And you can see there's my little template right there. We're going to click on parts though, and we're going to get all these new parts that we can play with. They're the same as the player, but they have different color values assigned to them. So that way we can have different color players and enemies. That'd be kind of confusing if we're all the same color. So just like in the player, it's a pretty straightforward process as long as you go slow and keep your head on. We're going to grab a body type like so and place it right on our enemy group place parts on here. Notice now place parts on here becomes a group that we can collapse and expand. All right, and then after we put it on there with our body selected, we go to our inspector and we make sure that my body is selected as body. That's nice. And then we go into my scene view and we position this body of this mech. I want to make this just a fat guy, a little bit busting out of the seams right there. All right, cool. And I'm just going to continue building this mech from different parts and pieces here. I'm going to go ahead and go into list mode. That way I can see the names of all these things. Let's give it a gun now. Let's expand how big my gun looks. You can kind of resize your windows if you'd like to do that. Make more room in your scene view. Just be real careful and wait for the little arrows to appear. It's a little finicky sometimes. Yeah, I don't know. You just got to kind of tweak it. All right, why don't we bring a gun in now? Let's bring this little cannon in. Remember, we're going to place it on parts here. And you know what? I'm going to start working a little fast now, because you've probably seen this 100 times so far, or you've done it 100 times. And maybe something I didn't get to last time, but see this little arrow right here? This is where our bullets actually come from. So if you want to select that arrow, we can see it our hierarchy right now. It's our primary shot spawn, and we can kind of put it in front of my weapon. I'm going to collapse that base group right there. We're going to. Oh, I can't select those. I can't select that now. Well, never fear, because we can use our hierarchy to select all our objects. That way we know exactly what we're selecting, and we're not accidentally moving the little transparent boxes around. So with my gun selected, I go over to my inspector, and this is a left gun, actually. So I'm going to tweak it to left gun, and I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to bring it over and call this right gun. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and build this out, and I'll come back and you can see what I made. Okay, I'm back with my completed enemy mech. Didn't take too long, maybe 5 minutes or so. And I really kind of went all out and added some fins and a weird vent, and I don't know, I gave him a little mouth. Why not? So there is my enemy mech, all decorated with our parts. All right, so why don't we test this to see how he looks? So we can't test him because our player is invisible. So we will get to testing whenever we fix our weapons on our enemy, and we can make sure everything checks out there. But I'm pretty sure I did a pretty good job, so I don't think I'm going to have to tweak him too much. But you never know. Okay, so before we can start testing, we're going to need to equip our enemy with some weapons. And it's a little bit different than the way we did our player, because our enemy contains his own weapons and his own enemy group. Let's zoom in on the hierarchy and see what I'm talking about. So if I collapse my enemy and reopen him, expand him out, we can see that I have this base mesh thing. It's a lot of stuff. If you ever get to a point where all this stuff is just coming down, hold down the left Alt key, like your camera key, and then click it. So next time you open it, it's a little bit neater. That's a little trick. So what we want to do, though, is we want to open up our primary shot type and secondary shot types. And now you have two options. You can start from scratch on each of these standard bullets and make new weapons, or you can delete, say, the standard bullet, break the prefab, no big deal. We'll save the prefab again in a second. And then we can come down to my project window down here and go to weapon types. So there's that shuriken storm I made last video. Or I can delve into my pre-mades. And I think I'm going to give this guy machine gun. Why don't we give him a machine gun? So I'll just drag and drop machine guns from our project window to our hierarchy, place him right there in the primary shot. So now he's equipped with a machine gun. All right. Same thing here. If you want to tweak this and make a new bullet, you can as well. Let's do that real quick. More practice making weapons never hurt. All right. So why don't we give our dude, I don't know, like a spinning buzzsaw attack. So we'll make the bullet spin. Fire rates don't really matter for our enemy because our fire rate is determined in our enemy AI. So we don't have to worry about that. But we can set it to the number of shots we fire. So we're going to do 3 buzzsaws at a shot interval. So do all of these buzzsaws launch at the same time? Or do we have like, 0.1 of a second shooting them in between? So 3, 3, 3, 3 instead of 3 all at once. Multi-shot fire rate. So this is an interesting value because it's a nice little setting. So whenever you're the player, this applies more to the player than I would say the enemy. But if you were the player and you got a power up that increased the number of shots you fired, and our damage is 1, and now we're shooting 3 bullets. Do we do 3 damage now instead of 1 damage? Well, that seems pretty overpowered for just adding 2 more bullets. Or maybe you want it to be overpowered. Either way, this little slider tweaks how much damage you're actually doing per volley of shots. So a volley would be like all 3 shots. So if you wanted it to do like triple damage, every bullet has 1 damage and it's doing 3 damage now, you can set it to 100%. Or if you want all the bullets to have their damage split up between the damage per bullet. So I was originally doing 1 damage. Just because I have 3 shots, I don't want a damage increase. So now all 3 of my bullets will add up to do 1 damage. Or you can go somewhere in between that. So you can either go in between your original bullet damage or, your full potential. That's how that little slider works. And that property exists for a few other things as well. And you'll just read the tooltip and it'll tell you what's going on with it. All right, so I don't care about a damage loss. Um, every bullet's going to do a full set of damage. So every buzzsaw, when it launches out, is going to do 2 damage. Because this is kind of like a special weapon. So it's going to do about 6 potential damage altogether. 3 bullets times 2 damage equals 6 potential things of damage. So that's terrifying. All right. So, do we want it to travel slow? Yeah, let's make it travel pretty slow. So let's make it travel at like 20, uh, 20 speed and give it a lifetime of like 6, though. So these things are going to be out there for a while. And they're going to be spinning and it might be piercing. I don't think enemy bullets can pierce. So I'll just leave that be. They'll just be spinning out there. And if you run into it, boom, you're hit. Cost doesn't matter for enemies. Spread shot, do we want it to fire in 3 different waves? So that'll be actually a forward shot plus 2 more bullets from a top and bottom shot. So basically, we're shooting out 3 sprays of 3 bullets each, doing 2 damage. That's crazy. I'm not going to do that. I will do a top shot and bottom shot. So he's going to split out these buzzsaws, and the angle between those buzzsaws will be about 30. So he's not going to shoot them directly at you. He's going to shoot them kind of at either side of you. All right. And I want the size to be about 4. These are going to be fairly big buzzsaws. All right. So we have a new weapon. We have like buzzsaws. So we'll call this angled buzzsaws. Angled buzz is what I'm going to call it. And we're going to take angled buzz and I'm going to save it now as a prefab. So I'm going to navigate in my project folder down here. I'm going to go ahead and find my weapon types right there. Go ahead and select that folder. Oh, don't rename it. And then I'm going to come up and drag angled buzz down into this folder. So now altogether I've made Shuriken Storm and angled buzz. We are ready to test our enemy now. So, to test our enemy, we're going to enable our player. So we're going to select our player in our hierarchy over here. And in our inspector, right up at the top there next to my player's name, we're going to click that little arrow and you see it pop up right here. But we notice a problem. My enemy is standing right on top of my player. Probably not a good, not the best thing. So I'm going to select my enemy, and we can find my enemy. If you feel like the hierarchy is just getting overwhelming, remember we can always just collapse everything and then start from the beginning. So I've collapsed everything, place enemies here. There's my enemy. That's what I want to grab. From here on out, we've already done his weapons. We've already done his parts. So we don't need anything else inside this enemy. So all we need to be able to do now is just, select enemy A. And that'll open up a bunch of different values we can tweak for them. But right now, we need to get this mech from being up on top of the player. So I'm going to grab my W key, and I'm going to move the enemy over here. All right, so I've moved my enemy over there, right in front of my player. Let's give him some more space. And I can even select my player mech over here, my Patrick's mech, and just move him back as well. So we give our guys some breathing space. And if you want to, I guess you don't have to rotate him, but you can maybe make him face the other player. And notice how I'm not just like clicking on the objects to select them. I'm kind of just using my hierarchy for what it's made for, to make clean, concise selections and really just do a good job and not getting too frustrated with, messing things up around here. Just being really slow, and every click I do, I have a purpose behind it. All right, so if we press play now, we see that we have this mech, and he's shooting like a standard snub-nosed bullet. Let's wait for it. Where's our... Oh, there's our... Oh, look at those buzzsaws. They're so beautiful. And, okay, we still have our orbit guns. Oh, I just got hit by the buzzsaw. That's not good. Oh, and now we have spawning ghost men. Oh, I love these shurikens. Alright. We're getting distracted. Let's unpause. So now we see that, our enemy's working pretty good. He's got just a standard bullet. He's got a pretty cool special attack. So, now is a good time to, I guess, start tweaking our enemy stats. Our enemy stats are how we dictate how strong they are and how they kind of just behave in the map. Okay? This enemy spawner is getting on my nerves. So you know what? Just so I can test this one single enemy, I'm going to expand my enemy spawner group, select my spawner template, and just like the player, I'm going to disable him. I think that'll be fine. Let's see if it crashes the game. No, I'm strong. Strong programmer. All right. So with our enemy spawn point kind of gone, we can just focus on testing out how this enemy fights our player, and in turn how we can fight it. So this is now a time where we start really doing some hardcore designing and making like a compelling experience. Either that means make it balanced, or just make it outrageous where the enemy kills you in one shot and you can't get hit. Or you're just super powerful and you just kill everything so easy. Whatever kind of design you want to go with it. I gave you the tools. Let's do it. Just don't break the game somehow by adding 80 million bullets to an enemy and then pressing play and wondering why. Well, what was this? Well, 80 million bullets. Okay, so what we need to do now is kind of go over how we can tweak the stats on my enemy AI. And I want to kind of go over the general basis for some of these sliders. Down here in the stats, you can see that the enemies have stats just like the player. So everything you see here is, what you think it would be. Nothing new here. Our enemy speed is how fast it walks, and yes, our enemies can sprint or dash at us. So that value will be used, and we can set its health. But the ammo isn't controlled by any kind of meter. The mechs aren't contained or restrained by fuel, and there's no cost. So really, we only just need to tweak how fast they move, how many points they're worth whenever they die. That's going to be important. Score is going to be important for our game. And basically how much health they have. I don't think health rate or health cooldown does anything. Don't quote me on that, though. You may want to test that out for me. So stats, pretty easy to understand. The enemy AI sub menu right here, though, this has some new things in it. And we're going to look and see what they are. First, we have a little grouping called visual audio. So if we want to see our health bar above our enemy, we can. If we want to see like a laser sight from them, we can do that as well. Our attack ranges kind of are about how our enemy finds us or sees us, starts attacking, and moves towards us. So our sight range is how far away to the enemy will they notice you. So you get within their sight range, they know you're there, alerted to your presence. They're going to probably start coming after you. Your attack range is how close the enemy has to be to start attacking. So as soon as my enemy sees you, my stats say that within 200 units, we also start attacking at 200 units. So as soon as I see you, I'm attacking. And then our dash range says, as soon as I see you, I'm going to sprint 50 yards until I get 150 units at you. Then I'm going to start walking at you, and I'm not going to stop until I reach 100 units from you. So, tweaking those values, seeing how they work is pretty good. Why don't we do like a really small sight range? And so your sight range kind of dictates how all these other things work because the enemy won't really do much unless they have a sight range. I think that mainly pertains to patrol, though. I could be wrong. Um, Whenever you're not patrolling, enemies are going to find you no matter where they're at. But sight range kind of dictates things like attack. So if you have an attack range of like 300 and a sight range of 60, the enemy is not going to see you to attack. So usually you want everything to kind of be below your sight range. An attack range is how fast they see you. So we're going to have an enemy that's kind of just blind, and he's not really going to have much room to run at us. But he's not going to stop coming at us until he's like right up on us, like 10 units away, 9. And he's going to sprint at us until he gets there. Okay, attack frequency is how often we shoot our primary weapon, which is our standard bullet for our enemy right now, and our secondary buzzsaw attack that we've assigned to it. So we have an X and a Y. X is like your minimum amount of seconds, and Y is a maximum. So we have a little bit of variation, so the enemy's not just shooting on a timer. But if you want the enemy just to shoot every second, make them 1 second each. But if you want the enemy to shoot between, 1 second and 3 seconds, then the game will pick a random number between these and then shoot at 2.2 seconds. And then the next time they shoot, it might be 1.8 seconds. So something like that, and we can do that for our secondary fire as well. Since our secondary fire is more powerful for our enemy, we're going to increase that time. So he either shoots it every 5 seconds to 10 seconds. So we're going to be seeing this a lot more, but it could be 9 seconds before we see a secondary attack. Patrolling, if we select patrolling, then our enemy will kind of, wherever they spawn, they're going to pick a destination within this many units. Okay? So 100 units away in like a big 100 unit circle around the enemy, right? Wherever it spawns, which is, it's going to spawn exactly. Why is this acting like that? That's crazy. Oh, that's my enemy spawner. Oops. Let's select my enemy. All right. So within 100 meter or 100 unit, I don't know if it's meters or not. It's just units. Within 100 units of my enemy, it's going to pick a spot to go whenever it starts the game. So it could pick a spot like over here or pick a spot over here. And this is its destination for where it wants to patrol at. Okay? Let's reset that. And then once it reaches its patrol destination, within 100 units, how far does it kind of patrol around randomly in that direction? So, it'll patrol in about a 30 unit area. So it'll kind of just wander around like a little area like this. And then you can set how often it changes its direction when it's patrolling. So you can make him, pick a new path between 5 and 10 seconds. No big deal. Let's make sure he is patrolling, though. Or we can pick our patrol wander range. And whenever our enemy sees us right here, oh, wow, you know what I was doing? I was setting the values for my spawner. Yeah, that's funny. So spawners do have enemy characteristics. So you can have a floating spawner that, rushes at you but is blind. So why don't we just pretend that I did all that stuff here? So I'm going to make all these small again. Don't tell anybody I did that. All right, but we are patrolling, and we want to find 100 range. We only want it to wander 30 units from that destination it finds. It's going to change its course every 5 to 10 seconds. I mean, you could have a really lazy guy that only changes his course once every 20 seconds. So it'll be easy to sneak up on that guy. Um, Patrol wander range. So if he does see you, how far does he chase you? Does he chase you for 150 units before he goes back to his patrol range? Maybe. Maybe he never. Maybe you have to just pretty much run away from him forever because that's a huge range. So we'll do about 150, like I said. Um, and then this is a funny one. We have a fleeing characteristic. So if we set that to true, whenever our enemy is attacking you, or whenever we get within, you know, 70, 90 units to it, it'll run away from us. And if it while it's running away, we can either have it shoot at us or not shoot at us. So that's something for us. And the spawning stuff, don't worry about it right now. There'll be a video on how we can get enemies to spawn from spawners right after this one. Oh no, air. That's not related to this. Okay. Um, so we've kind of gone over our enemy AI, and right now it's just kind of up to you to start figuring out how all these things work against our player. So just tweak it, tweak something, press play. Right now our enemy doesn't see where we are, but he's going to his destination point. He looks so dumb and doofy. I made him a big fat guy. All right. He's taking forever to get there. But when he gets there, it might be okay. Oh, he hit a permanent building. Oh, he's finding a new destination point to walk to. He only changes every 20 seconds. Remember, he's lazy. But he doesn't notice me until I get right on him. I kind of want to wonder. I think what we had is just a conflicting of stats there. So our enemy doesn't really turn to face us. So what's going on with that? So I troubleshot that, and I was right. I had reservations on activating fleeing and patrolling at the same time. So I think we can do one or the other. It's an enemy that kind of rushes at you. There was something weird with the fleeing mechanic. You might be able to do both, but I think it was a conflict of interest between how far our enemy tried to run away and how close we made him get. So some values just may not work with one another. That's up for you to find as well. So we'll not have this enemy flee. And why don't we have this patrolling dude that only attacks us when we get right up on him? Oh man, I forgot my jump is still bad. So we see that he's patrolling around the street now. We're getting pretty close to him, pretty close. He didn't even see us. How stupid. Oh, it looks like he almost does. Oh, okay, he sees us. Oh no, I just killed him. I want to see those buzzsaws again. So I want to walk to him. And if we get right, you see he's picking a new destination to go to. That's pretty cool, isn't it? So, okay, we got close enough for him to notice us. So there's his missiles. Don't shoot him, Patrick. Oh! Those buzzsaws are just devastating from up close because they all hit you at once. See if I can get the right distance. Oh, man, that's so cool. Yeah, you're done, pal. Go take a break. Alright, cool. So, that's enemy stat tweaking for us. So, we have our blind patrolling enemy. What we want to do now is save enemy A as a prefab so we can use him later on in our game. So what we're going to do is in our project folder down here, we're going to look in project and we're going to select enemy mechs. Right now we just have enemy mech template. So what we're going to do is we're going to take enemy A that I made and drag and drop him right into that folder, and boom, you can see this little chunky guy right here who can't see. I mean, he can't see because look, his cockpit is like pointing backwards. He can't even see over this vent. That's just a terribly designed enemy, and I hate him. So I'm going to enjoy blowing him up over and over again. Okay, so we've made our enemy. We've made him a prefab. That's awesome. What we can do now is basically set up our scene to make another enemy. So let's see how we can do that. And we're going to do that. We're going to set up another enemy by kind of repeating the process again. This time, now that my player mech has kind of moved away from the center of the grid, I'll maybe just keep him in the scene this time. But I do want to delete enemy A. And that might be scary, but guess what? We have him saved down here. He's not going to go away. So boom, he's gone. And guess what? Enemy A lives on. In fact, I can just drag him right into the scene again. Put him right back on, place enemies here. But that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to make a new enemy. So what I'm actually going to do, and hopefully you haven't saved over enemy template. If you have, you can just, if you only have like, one enemy in there, you can take your enemy and hit Control D and duplicate him and kind of delete all the parts off and all that stuff. But I'm going to pretend that we still have, well, I kind of just deleted that template. So I'm going to bring it back real quick. So I used magic and I turned enemy A1 into enemy template. So let's get rid of enemy A. We want to get rid of him in our scene. And we want to bring back our enemy template and place him right back in the center. And guess what? We can start the process all over again now. So just to make sure we don't ever save over our enemy template, anytime you bring enemy template into the scene, always get in the habit of renaming them. And we'll call this enemy B. And in fact, we can go ahead and save it as a prefab if you want. So boom, enemy A, enemy B. Enemy B is naked. We haven't decorated them. And now, anytime we make any changes to our enemy that we want to update, we can go over with our enemy B selected. We can go over to our inspector over here and see how it has prefab written right here. We can hit apply, and that'll save everything we've done to our enemy, and that'll apply the prefab. It's like saving it to your library. So let me show you what that's like. So right now, enemy B is naked in my preview down here, right? In this little preview window. So why don't we give this thing a body? I'm not going to completely remake this or make this enemy over again. But I am going to bring a part in so I can show you how we can update prefabs. So let's bring in body A, place him right there, drag him up, make some changes so we know, this is our mech whenever we see it. Make this a flat guy. I don't know if that looks good or bad. It's real bad. But you know what? This is what we're doing. We're making dumpy, stubby enemies. Okay, so right now, enemy B has a body on it. So I'm going to save that, and in my project folder, we're going to go back to our enemy mechs folder right here, and we're going to click on enemy B, and we can still see that my preview down in the bottom right hand is still empty. All right, look what happens to this preview when we come back and select it. We're going to go to enemy B, and remember that apply prefab button? We're going to hit apply. All right, so what does that do exactly? Well, there's our enemy A, there's our enemy template, but now that we've applied the prefab to it, there's our enemy B with that chunky chunk right there. So that's kind of two ways to make prefabs or to update your prefab. Remember, if you want to make a prefab, you have to rename it and then drag it into a folder down here in our project window. All right, guys. So just make sure any enemy you make, you save it as a prefab with a different name, and you'll be very happy that you did because you'll be able to use it in other levels. All right. So I'll see you guys next video.